The inspector nodded, tucking the papers into his briefcase. Mrs. Voss, you'll need to come with me to answer some questions. And that fence, he pointed to the chain-link barrier blocking the Harpers' driveway, is coming down today, or you'll face additional citations. Margaret's eyes widened, a flicker of panic breaking through her defiance. She turned to the crowd, searching for allies, but found only cold stares. Even Carl, her accomplice from the night before, stood at the edge of the group, his head bowed, his bolt cutters nowhere in sight. Emily felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by the weight of what had come before: the sleepless nights, the violent clash, the fear that had gripped her family. She stepped forward, her sneakers sinking into the soft grass, and met Margaret's gaze. "You thought you could control us," she said, her voice low but unyielding. "You thought you could trap us and walk away. But you're the one trapped now." Margaret's lips trembled, but she said nothing, her silence louder than any threat she'd ever made. By afternoon, the neighborhood was a hive of activity. City workers arrived with tools, dismantling Margaret's fence with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed play. The chain links fell in a clatter of metal, the concrete posts uprooted with a groan, leaving raw patches of earth where the Harpers' driveway reclaimed its freedom. Emily stood at the edge, watching as her van, stranded, rolled back into its rightful place, the crunch of gravel under its tires, a small but triumphant sound. Tom rested a hand on her shoulder, his cut now bandaged, his eyes bright with relief. Lily, filming the scene for her followers, grinned. "This is going viral," she whispered. "Karen's done for." Across the street, the Harpers' barricade remained, a testament to their defiance. Emily had agreed to dismantle it, but not until Margaret's fence was gonna final stand to ensure their victory. Neighbors pitched in, their fear of Margaret replaced by a tentative camaraderie. Mr. Patel hauled planks to his truck, his rose bushes no longer a source of shame. Sarah sorted wire mesh, her quiet courage now a beacon for others. The air was alive with the scent of sawdust and the soft clink of tools. A new rhythm emerging from the chaos. As evening fell, Margaret's house stood quiet, its windows dark. She'd left with the inspector, her blazer rumpled, her head bowed. Whispers circulated that the county was investigating her finances, that her reign as HOA president was over. But the true blow came later, when Lily burst into the kitchen, her phone glowing with a new post from the neighborhood forum. "Look at this," she said, thrusting the screen toward Emily. It was a confession from Carl. "He's turning on her," Lily said, her eyes wide. "He says there's more evidence, emails, bank records. She's finished." Emily sank into a chair, the weight of their victory settling over her. She imagined herself standing before Margaret's house, not as an enemy, but as a survivor. The siege had cost them bruises, sleepless nights, the trust of a fractured community, but it had also freed them. The rhythm of their lives, once dictated by Margaret's cruelty, was theirs to reclaim. She glanced at Tom, who nodded, his hand finding hers. "We did it," he said softly. "We're free." The barricade came down that night, its pieces stacked neatly by the curb, a relic of a war item. Willow Creek settled into a fragile peace, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and the promise of change. Neighbors lingered in their yards, their voices softer now, their fences no longer battle lines. Emily stood on her porch, watching the stars emerge, their light a gentle reminder of the world beyond Maple Lane. The story of the siege would linger, told and retold, but for the Harpers it was over. They'd faced a tyrant and won, not with cruelty, but with courage. As the neighborhood slept, Emily closed her eyes, the hum of crickets a lullaby. She imagined herself walking through Willow Creek years from now. The scars of this war faded, the community healed. Margaret's name would be a cautionary tale, a whisper of what happens when power turns to poison. For now, though, Emily was content to stand in the quiet, her family safe, her driveway open, her victory hard-earned and sweet. And so, the siege of Maple Lane came to an end, its echoes fading into the gentle hum of Willow Creek's nightly rhythm. The air, once thick with the scent of conflict sawdust, rain. Emily Harper and her family stood victorious, their driveway reclaimed, their spirit unbroken. Margaret Voss, the HOA Karen who'd ruled with an iron clipboard, was undone by her own cruelty, her empire of fines and fences reduced to a cautionary tale. Imagine yourself in their place, standing on a porch, bathed in starlight, the weight of a hard-fought battle lifting from your shoulders. This is the power of resilience, the quiet triumph of those who refuse to be caged. The story of the reminds us that even in the most polished corners of our world, where lawns are manicured and rules are sacred, conflict can simmer like a storm beneath the surface. It's a tale of defiance, of community, of the moment when ordinary people find extraordinary courage. As you reflect on their journey, the blockade, the fence, the retaliation, the barricade, the siege, the violent clash, and the revelation, the resolution, consider the cost of victory, the bruises, the sleepless nights, the betrayals, the neighbors who stayed silent until the tide had turned. Yet, but also consider the reward, a neighborhood reborn, its rhythm no longer dictated by fear, but by hope. The Harpers didn't just tear down a fence, they tore down a tyrant, and in doing so, they gave Willow Creek a chance to heal. As we leave this story, let it linger in your mind, a gentle reminder that the battles we fight, whether over a driveway or a deeper injustice, shape not just our lives, but the world around us. The rhythm of their lives, once fractured, now flows freely, a melody of resilience and redemption. And so, we bid farewell to Maple Lane, to the Harpers, to the siege that changed everything. May their victory inspire you, wherever you stand, to face your own fences with courage and grace. By midnight, the barricade was complete. It was a ramshackle structure, wooden planks, nailed to stakes, reinforced with wire mesh, and topped with jagged scraps of metal. It looped around Margaret's property, sealing her driveway and blocking the narrow path to her backyard. Emily stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow, the air now thick with the scent of pine and rust. The barricade wasn't elegant, but it was effective, a prison of their own making. Tom rested a hand on her shoulder, his voice a whisper. "She's going to lose it when she sees this." Emily's lips twitched into a grim smile. "Good. Let her feel what we felt." The next morning, Willow Creek woke to chaos. Margaret emerged from her house at precisely 7:45, as she did every day, her blazer crisp and her clipboard in hand. She froze mid-step, her eyes widening at the barricade that had sprouted overnight. The neighborhood held its breath, the air heavy with anticipation. Margaret's scream shattered the silence, a high, piercing sound that sent birds scattering from the trees. Who did this? She stormed to the edge of her driveway, her heels clicking furiously, and tugged at the wooden planks. They didn't budge. Her face flushed crimson, her carefully composed facade cracking like porcelain. Emily watched from her porch, her heart pounding but her expression calm. Neighbors gathered again, their murmurs louder now. Online audience. Margaret spun toward the crowd, her eyes locking onto Emily. "You?" she hissed, pointing a trembling finger. "This is your doing, isn't it? You'll pay for this, Harper. I'll have you fined, evicted, arrested." Emily met her gaze, unflinching. "Go ahead, Margaret. Call the city. Let's see who's breaking the rules now." Margaret's threats hung in the air, unanswered, as she retreated to her house, slamming the door. The barricade stood firm, its shadow stretching across her lawn like a warning. Inside the Harper home, the mood was a mix of triumph and unease. Tom checked the barricade's stability, muttering about reinforcing it before Margaret found a way out. Lily scrolled through comments on her post, some cheering their boldness, others warning of Margaret's influence. Emily stood at her window, watching Margaret's curtains twitch. She imagined Margaret pacing her pristine living room, the clink of her wine glasses replaced by the rattle of her nerves. Margaret wasn't the type to surrender. She'd fight back, and the clash would be brutal. As night fell, the barricade loomed under the streetlights, its jagged edges catching the glow. The neighborhood settled into an uneasy quiet, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. The rhythm of their lives had changed. Wrath. The air carried the fresh scent of rain-washed earth, mingling with the faint temps of sawdust from the battered barricade encircling Margaret Voss's house. The neighborhood stirred cautiously, its rhythm disrupted by the memory of last night's violence, the splintered wood, the blood on Tom's cheek, Margaret's wild eyes. Emily Harper stood on her porch, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, her gaze fixed on the barricade. Its jagged silhouette was a testament to their defiance, but also a reminder of how far this war had spiraled. Today, she sensed, would bring an end to it one way or another. Inside, the Harper household was a quiet fortress. Tom cleaned the cut on his face, his movements slow but resolute, while Lily scrolled through her phone, reading messages from neighbors who'd watched the siege unfold. "They're saying Margaret's done," Lily said, her voice hushed. "But some think she's got one last trick." Emily nodded, her mind replaying Margaret's retreat, the fear in her eyes. The HOA president was cornered, her supplies nearly gone, her ally, Carl, humiliated. But Emily knew better than to underestimate her. Margaret's power wasn't just in her clipboard, it was in her ability to manipulate, to twist the narrative. The rhythm of their lives hung in the balance, and Emily braced for the final blow. By mid-morning, the street buzzed with activity. Stood nearby, their faces tense but determined. Stood firm, but its presence had shifted something in Willow Creek, a crack in the HOA's iron grip, a spark of rebellion. Yet Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't hers to finish alone. The turning point came at noon, heralded by the crunch of tires on gravel. A city inspector's van rolled into the street, its logo gleaming in the sunlight. Emily's heart leapt. Tom's calls to the city had finally borne fruit. The inspector, a wiry man with a clipboard of his own, stepped out, eyeing the barricade and the chain-link fence blocking the Harpers' driveway. Margaret emerged from her house, her blazer immaculate despite her ordeal, her face a mask of composure. She strode toward the inspector, her voice smooth as silk. "Thank goodness you're here," she said. "These people have turned our neighborhood into a war zone." The inspector raised an eyebrow, glancing between them, then pulled out a surveyor's map. The crowd hushed, the air thick with anticipation as he measured the boundaries. Minutes stretched into eternity, the soft clink of his tape measure the only sound. Finally, he straightened, his expression grim. "Mrs. Voss, your fence encroaches on the Harpers' property by 4 inches. It's in violation of city code. And this barricade," he gestured toward the Harpers' structure, "is on private property, so it's your dispute to settle. But I'd suggest you start with your own violation." The crowd murmured, emboldened, as Margaret's authority unraveled. Emily felt a surge of triumph, but it was tempered by caution. Margaret's eyes darted, calculating, searching for an escape. The final twist came from an unexpected source. Sarah, the quiet neighbor who'd joined the Harpers' cause, stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "I kept copies." She handed the papers to the inspector, who skimmed them, his frown deepening. The crowd gasped, and Emily's jaw tightened. Sarah had never mentioned this. She'd been a silent ally, her betrayal of Margaret a secret now, a weapon that turned the HOA president's own cruelty against her. Margaret's face drained of color. Her clipboard falling. Margaret's face drained of color, her clipboard falling to the damp grass with a soft thud. The papers scattered, their edges curling in the faint breeze, as if the secrets they held were eager to escape. The air in Willow Creek was sharp with the scent of rain-soaked earth, and the crowd stood frozen, their eyes darting between Sarah's trembling hands and Margaret's unraveling composure. Emily Harper felt the rhythm of their lives shift, the weight of years of Margaret's tyranny teetering on the edge of collapse. Sarah's revelation, those damning documents, each page. "These are serious allegations," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Embezzlement, forged documents. This goes beyond HOA disputes. I'll need to escalate this to the county." Margaret's lips parted, but no words came. Her hands fluttered uselessly, grasping at the air as if she could claw back her authority. "This is a misunderstanding," she finally stammered, her voice brittle. "Those are fabricated." Sarah's lying. She's always been jealous. But her words fell flat, swallowed by the crowd's growing boldness. Neighbors who'd once cowered under her gaze now stepped closer, their whispers turning to open accusations. Emily watched, her heart pounding but her face calm. She imagined herself in Margaret's place, cornered by her own schemes, the walls of her carefully built empire crumbling. Sarah, still clutching the remaining papers, spoke again, her voice steadier now. "I found the records when I was archiving old fines. Margaret charged people for violations that never existed, hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands. She funneled it into an account under her cousin's name. I didn't say anything before because," she faltered, glancing at the ground, "because I was scared. But seeing what she did to the Harpers, I couldn't stay quiet." The morning sun had barely crested the rooftops of Willow Creek when Emily Harper stepped onto her porch, coffee mug in hand, ready to start her day. Usual rhythm. Children pedaling bikes, joggers padding along the sidewalk, and the distant bark of a dog. Sat at the corner of Maple Lane, its driveway, a vital artery connecting her family to the world beyond. She glanced toward it, expecting the familiar sight of her husband's car parked neatly at the edge. Instead, her breath caught in her throat. A fence, a towering chain-link monstrosity, stood where her driveway met the street, its metal glinting cruelly in the dawn light. Her mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the porch steps. The fence was no accident. It stretched precisely across the width of her driveway, anchored by concrete posts sunk deep into the earth. A padlocked gate, adorned with a glaring "No Trespassing" sign, mocked her from its center. Emily's heart pounded as she approached, her bare feet crunching over the gravel. Beyond the fence, her van sat stranded, its hood barely visible through the links. Her mind raced. The kids needed to get to school. Her husband, Tom, had a critical meeting. Was war. By mid-morning, the Harpers' front yard was a hive of outrage. Their teenage daughter, Lily, snapped photos with her phone, muttering about posting them online. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the commotion like moths to a flame. Whispers rippled through the crowd, words like HOA violation and Karen. Emily's eyes scanned the faces, searching for answers, until they landed on her. Margaret Voss, the HOA president. The summer heat. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a crisp blazer, despite the warmth, her clipboard clutched like a shield. "Good morning, Harpers," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I trust you've seen the improvement to your property line." Emily's fists. "We can't get out. This is illegal." Margaret's smile widened, revealing a flash of teeth. "Illegal? Oh dear, you're mistaken. Your driveway encroaches on community property by precisely 3 inches. The HOA board voted unanimously to rectify this violation. You were notified." She tapped her clipboard, where a single sheet of paper fluttered, stamped with the HOA's seal. Tom stepped forward, his voice steady but laced with fury. "Notified. We never got a letter. And 3 inches. You're destroying our lives over 3 inches." Margaret's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Mr. Harper, perhaps you should have read the bylaws before parking your van like a common eyesore." She gestured toward the vehicle, its faded paint suddenly a crime in her eyes. "Consider this a lesson in civic responsibility." The crowd murmured, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. She knew the stories, the fines for unapproved flower beds, the threats over holiday lights left up too long. Margaret ruled Willow Creek not with kindness but with fear, her clipboard a weapon sharper than any blade. As the day wore on, the Harpers' predicament deepened. Tom called the city, only to learn that HOA disputes required lengthy arbitration. Home across the street, but the door remained shut, the curtains twitching. By evening, the family was trapped, their van useless, their supplies dwindling. Lily's soccer practice was canceled, and Tom missed his meeting, his boss's voice sharp over the phone, the scent of burnt toast lingering from a makeshift dinner outside. The fence loomed like a sentinel, its shadow stretching across the lawn as the sun dipped low. Emily stood at her window, watching Margaret's house glow with warm light, the faint clink of wine glasses drifting through an open window. Emily's fingers tightened on the sill, her mind churning. Margaret thought she'd won, that her petty power play would break them. But Emily felt something shift inside her, spark of defiance, a plan taking root. If Margaret wanted a war, she'd get one. The neighborhood settled into its nightly rhythm, the hum of air conditioners replacing the chatter of the day. But for the Harpers, sleep was a distant hope. They gathered in their living room, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows. Tom sketched ideas on a notepad: legal appeals, media outreach, while Lily scrolled through neighborhood forums, reading posts about Margaret's past crusades. Smile. She imagined herself standing before that fence, not as a victim, but as a warrior. The rules, Margaret had said. Well, Emily could play by rules to her own. As midnight approached, Emily slipped outside, the cool grass tickling her bare feet. The street was silent, the fence a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. She ran her hand along its links, feeling the cold bite of metal. This wasn't just a barrier, it was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at her family's feet. Margaret had underestimated her, mistaking patience for weakness. Emily's lips curved into a faint smile, the first she'd felt all day. Tomorrow, she thought, the rhythm of their lives would change, painting the rooftops in hues of gold and pink. The air carried the faint tang of dew-soaked pavement, and the neighborhood stirred with its usual rhythm, sprinklers hissing, garage doors creaking open. But at the Harper household, the morning was anything but ordinary. Emily stood in her backyard, her breath visible in the cool air, her eyes fixed on the chain-link fence that had severed her family's lifeline. The metal glinted mockingly, a symbol of Margaret's unchallenged power. But Emily wasn't the same woman who'd stood helplessly before it yesterday. Her resolve had hardened overnight, like clay baked in a kiln, and she was ready to rewrite the rules of this war. Inside, the Harpers huddled over the kitchen table, the scent of strong coffee mingling with the faint must of old blueprints Tom had unearthed from the basement. He spread them out, pointing to the property lines that defined their lot and Margaret's. "Her fence is on our land," he said, his finger tracing a boundary that overlapped their driveway by a mere sliver. "She's banking on us not fighting back, but we can use this." His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with the same fire Emily felt. "People are pissed, Mom. They're just too scared to stand up to her." Emily nodded, her mind already racing ahead. She imagined herself facing Margaret, not with pleas or arguments, but with actions, something bold, something undeniable. "If she wants to play dirty," Emily said, her voice low, "we'll show her what it feels like to be caged." The plan took shape. Quickly, born from equal parts desperation and ingenuity, they would build a barricade around Margaret's house, a mirror to her own cruelty, cutting off her access to the world just as she'd done to them. It wasn't just retaliation, it was justice. By noon, the Harpers were a whirlwind of activity. Tom called in favors from coworkers, securing surplus lumber and metal sheeting from a construction site. Lily rallied a small group of sympathetic neighbors: Mr. Patel, from 2 doors down, who'd once been fined for his rose bushes, and Sarah, a single mom who'd clashed with Margaret over her kid's lemonade stand. They gathered in the Harpers' backyard, their voices hushed but electric with purpose. The air smelled of sawdust and determination as they sorted materials: planks of weathered wood, rolls of wire mesh, and a pile of metal stakes. Emily directed the effort, her hands steady as she handed out tools, her mind mapping the layout of Margaret's property. Margaret's colonial home sat across the street, its white columns and manicured lawn a testament to her obsession with control. Emily's plan was simple but audacious: encircle the property with a makeshift barricade, high enough to block her car, strong enough to withstand her protests. They worked under the cover of dusk, the sky bruising purple as they hauled materials across the street. Neighbors peeked from behind. Fear of Margaret's wrath kept them at bay, but curiosity held their gaze.